Hey Nolan, how's it going? It's been a while. All right, nice edge on the pencil. Back to it. Just adjust a couple things here. All right. Well, actually, I am noticing there's a drawing on the back of this page. Nice. Well, I'll be on for a little bit. I don't know how long I'll go tonight, but my goal now is to try and live stream as many days of this year as I can. Let me pivot real quick. I think I'm like down to my last few pages in this book. As always, the beginning of the drawing is the most boring part. I'm going to see what other pages I have left. Technically, I have a drawing I should probably be finishing, which I may just do that instead because I don't want to flip through pages too much here, especially at the beginning of going live. Oh, this page has got a little scuffing on it, but I think it's all right. I'll do a new one. Screw it. I've been dabbling a little bit in the last few weeks. I appreciate that, Nolan. I'm back at my day job for the time being, and I've been going live a little bit in the mornings. I've tried TikTok and it's trash, as I would assume, but I figured I'd try it just anyway. And I'm coming back here, so pretty much whether I'm working or not, I'm going to go live at night. I haven't nailed down an exact time, but nighttime is the time. So it is pouring down rain here. So eventually I did get some new microphones to use, since most of these live streams have a pretty heavy overflow of noise from our neighbors, but alas, I forgot to charge my phone, so it's on the charge instead of having the mics plugged in. And as per usual, I'm going to let people guess who I'm drawing. It actually has a little bit to do with what I was talking about, because I've only been working lately. It's been pretty dull. Hopefully everyone had a good holiday. I feel like I'm in retail mode. All right. Damn, man, that sucks. Hopefully you're all right. I've had a few myself. Okay, I'm a little rusty, but here we go. And away we go. Maybe you'll get a nice car out of it, though. It's occasionally happened in my life, but I had a couple band vans that got T-boned. Which at the time, I wasn't in them, luckily. It was when the singer was driving. But at the time, he was blaming the other people, but after having ridden with them for years, I kind of feel like it was his fault somehow. Anyway, back to the drawing. I've been working a ton lately, which my job technically overlaps with a lot of what I do in terms of the materials I use and, you know, a lot of the stuff I end up talking about on here. So it ain't all bad, but it's like sort of medium level, high end retail in San Francisco, which can be really cool sometimes and really uncool other times. Alright, just going to do a couple quick measurements. So for anyone that's new to watching, typically what I do is I establish the reference points from the bottom of the nose, the corner to corner of the mouth where the chin falls, eye line, eyebrow line, hairline, and then I measure according to those. So right now what I'm going to measure is sort of width of the nostrils and then adjust. And I use a little ruler like this. It's hard to see sometimes. It's an automotive ruler, so it's really flat and really flexible, meaning that it'll go into any of my journals, like any of my leather journals. It fits in there pretty well. Let's see. But yeah, like I was saying, I haven't been drawing live as much as I usually would. And so today is number 1. I'm a little wide, that's all right. And I'm going to try to go live every day this year. So barring any personal things or maybe occasional travel. But even then, I might just do like a lazy setup and go live. But in the spirit of what I was talking about, if anyone wants to guess who I'm drawing as it gets more developed, just been working too much. Has a lot to do with that. All work and no play. Let's see, he said, yeah, be more frugal. Yeah, that's, not that anyone's asking me for advice, but save what you can. There we are. All right. And like I said, I'm a little rusty. It's been a few weeks since I've been on live, but still draw every day. I try to move relatively quickly for the sake of the viewers. And anyone who's watched these before knows I usually have a lot of noise from my neighbors. So luckily, starting tomorrow, I have some noise canceling microphones that I'm going to try to use. See if I can't get a little bit cleaner audio while I'm talking, but more specifically while I'm on the page so you can hear the pencil. All right, the next measurement that I do for anyone that's watching to learn is from the bottom of the nose to where the eye line connects with the bridge of the nose. Getting a couple of these measurements dialed in early on helps you get a more photo accurate drawing by the end of it. Pretty symmetrical. All right. And again, just slightly off there with my guidelines. But that's what you get for eyeballing it, pun intended. And the next measurement, typically, and I only measure really in the beginning of these, but is the width of the bridge of the nose, especially right at where the eye line is. That helps you measure out the distance between the eyes. And again, it's pretty symmetrical. Yep. All right, slightly above. It's going to be a wrinkle in the nose. And with these drawings, mainly just talking in case anyone wants to learn or is curious about my process. The first drawing process of like the live stream anyway is always the most rough part. By the end of this, you should see a little bit more of a form. And I also draw a little bit quicker on these lives just so people aren't bored out of their minds. Next measurement is going to be from this point of the bridge of the nose to the corner of the eye. And if anyone's curious about the materials that I'm using, I am using a Blackwing Natural, which is the extra firm graphite. I find that that's the most adaptable one for my drawing style so far. And very cool. I think I mentioned this last time I was on, but I'm officially an ambassador for Blackwing now. So it's a lot of time drawing with them has paid off. Kind of. I mean, I haven't really made anything with it yet, but it's cool to just say it. Alright, very symmetrical again. So now what I'm measuring is from this corner of the eye to the other corner, the outer corner. Just giving a little rough mark. Then I'll measure from here to the other corner of his left eye. And once you get these few anchor points in, it's easier to draw a better photo-accurate drawing. Ooh, not symmetrical. There you go, it's more like a normal reference photo all of a sudden. Yeah, it's been kind of cool. I'm also officially an ambassador for Paper Republic, which is the journals and the paper that I use. That's a company I've actually worked with for a long time, and they've been like really cool about sending a lot of really cool stuff. They sent me an A5 and this A4 that I'm drawing in. These leather portfolios, and then they've sent a pen that they just developed that I've done some scribble method drawing with. I'll post some more of that. I've got some of it in my shorts. Not right now, I'm wearing sweats. But my reels or whatever they're called. All right. That's our rough measurements. Now it's time to sketch. But yeah, I've had like a love-hate sort of thing with some of the Blackwing stuff. I think really it was more of a testament of trying to figure out the right medium to use. The paper that I'm drawing in right now, it's 150 GSM. So it doesn't have a lot of grit to it, but it just, I feel like it responds better to certain pencils for what I do. And a lot of like the Blackwings that I had for a long time were gifted to me, and so I didn't really choose the graphite that I was using. I found that like the Blackwings, it's like black and gold. Although they look really cool, they're way too soft for me. And then the 602s are, for a long time I thought the Frank Lloyd Wright series was a 602, and then I realized they're actually extra firm, so it's just this with different markings on the actual pencil, which explains why those were my favorite to draw with so far. But it was kind of cool. I did a time lapse of over 100 hours. I can't remember the exact number of drawing with Blackwing pencils and a few other things, and tagged them. And then I had a dialogue a little bit with someone that worked there, and they really liked that reel that I made of the time lapse, showing like all the hours spent using Blackwing. And then they offered for me to be like an ambassador, which I don't know, it's kind of like, sounds cheesy, sounds like a Star Wars character. Or like an attaché, if anyone's a Patriot fan. Not the football team, but the show. But yeah, one last round of measurements. I'm going to measure the width of his eye, which I'm guessing is at about, oh, it's a little higher than I thought. And this is going to be a slightly different eye than what I would normally draw, because he's tilting his head down, so you're going to see less of the top of his iris, which a lot of people miss. They always try to perfectly center the iris. Just for a little comparison. Yep. So I'm going to work on this one for the next few days. My goal with the first round of a sketch is always to establish a recognizable figure. And then I'll go back in the following days and build more of a photorealistic drawing. And then one, I kind of need to do cleanup. I started drawing the dude a few weeks ago, and work just was a little too crazy and I didn't stay with it. And like I was saying at the beginning of this, I was drawing partly on TikTok just to test out their live before I start multi-streaming, and really was annoyed with it, so I kind of abandoned that drawing, but it's in here. Actually, I'll show you real quick if anyone's curious. I can flip through some of the previous guys in these series. So there's Tom Hardy. And again, that's all done with Pentel Graph Gear 1000s and Blackwing extra firms. So that's these and then the Frank Lloyd Wright series. So there's Tom Hardy, there's Joaquin Phoenix, there's Josh Brolin, Johnny Depp, Brad Pitt as Cliff Booth, Christian Bale, John Bernthal, Owen Wilson. Wow. This one actually, I think I finished this off, like just in the real world. Daniel Day-Lewis, like in a lesser recognized form. Willie Nelson. Jimi Hendrix. Young Tom Petty, which I think a lot of people also don't really recognize him like that because they're used to seeing him like old or older. And then this is the one that I was talking about. I need to finish this this week. Basically, I need to reshape his nose, and then I was kind of debating because he's got the classic dude sweater on in this to not do a floating head this time and actually do a full bust. But that's, you know, like 50% done. So I'll come back on at some point and do that. But for now, I'm going to keep chipping away at this one. But for anyone who's new watching these things, you kind of see where these go. And then I think after I finish this and the dude, this book is actually done. Because it started out kind of like with random styles. So it's a little bit piecemeal, but I've got another one ready to go, and it's 96 pages. I think 94 actually full, like unglued pages. But yeah, on that one, I'm just going to do 94 portraits like this. So that should take up the first quarter of the year. This is one of those moments where it really tests like how asymmetrical people's eyes are. The natural inclination when you're drawing is to try and make them symmetrical, but nobody's face is, unless you're an Egyptian statue. Okay. And then hopefully the last measurement that I really do, there might be a couple stray ones in here, is from the edge of this iris to this one. And there's a lot of features on this reference photo that I'm using that are symmetrical, but his expression is not, which makes for like a good challenge. Not like a good challenge, it makes for a good challenge. Hey Brendan, what's the crack? For anyone that doesn't know, that is somewhat of a well-known Irish term, I would hope, depending on where you're at. I'm actually going to move this one out just a little bit. Nice. Clean this edge a little. Try not to clean too much in the sketch phase, but just for the sake of the viewer. And I was saying earlier that I've been working too much with the holiday season, but that is starting to slow down. So it's kind of inspired what made me think to draw who I'm drawing. Still too early for anyone to guess, but yeah, it'll make sense if you know the reference. Gotta get some of these striations over here. It is a famous person. It's a famous actor playing a very famous character. But as per usual with all my stuff, it's kind of dated. So I'm a little older than the average viewer, I think. Unless you're just a film buff. Typically, I do draw famous people for these for the sake of the live streams. But I've got a couple series coming up where I'm going to be drawing people that I know. And some just people that I've met that are just sort of good subjects, which I think is sometimes more fun for me. But no, not Hannibal Lecter, but it's kind of in that genre. Speaking of him, there's actually a thing I watched yesterday about how there's is it the Mandela effect? It's the thing where we all know a quote of somebody that isn't actually from the film, like the Berenstain Bears, those types of things. Apparently, Hannibal Lecter never actually said "Hello, Clarice." That is something that we all associate with him, but it's actually from Jim Carrey saying it in The Cable Guy. which oddly enough is like the third or fourth time I've brought that movie up this week, which means I should probably go back and rewatch it. Cable Guy, not Silence of the Lambs. I watched that not that long ago. Do I use 3 different pencils? Yes. So the one I'm using right now is a Blackwing extra firm natural. It's like the pencil itself is just a little bit more tough, so it keeps fine edge a little better. So I have to sharpen it a little less, and also because it allows me to use the same pencil for a little longer on these large drawings. And then I also use a 0.5 Pentel Graph Gear 1000 and a 0.3 of the same. Those I just get into like finer detail. Like I was saying, this is 150 GSM paper, so there is a little bit of grit to it, which gives like a nice marbling for skin texture for photo, or for like a photorealistic pencil portrait. And then the page, this is an A4. So I draw in 3 sizes mainly. The biggest one is A4 right now, which before too long I'm actually going to get a different setup for my desk so I can do a larger portfolio and draw upright. Yes, yep. I think that's like a regional thing. Some people in the US say GM, some people say GSM, some people say GCSM. I think I've just gotten lazy because I sell this paper at my day job as well. And so the amount of people that ask me, depending on where they're from, it's always different. And also in some of these books, they are marked differently. I believe in this one, it's 150 GSM, but all meaning the same thing. If you're curious, it's Paper Republic. It's the drawing books that they have. That's what I draw in all sizes. It's the ones with the white covers because they have a heavier reinforced page. And they open up in a gatefold, so it's completely flat. Appreciate that. It's very early in the stages, so this is the part where people just have to hang in there. I'll be honest, I've drawn these portraits so much that I go into autopilot, so I have to really focus to not drift off. I have a movie playing on my AirPods in the background. I kind of trade in and out of whether I'm listening to a playlist or watching a movie. I'm not really watching, but sort of glancing at it every once in a while. Is it a hobby? Drawing? So it's a bit of both. I do commissions, I sell art, I sell prints, I teach private art lessons uh, here in San Francisco. And I also have, like, just recently I started going back to my day job. I took almost a year and a half off for the day job to just draw and kind of figure out if I do want to go completely freelance again, because I did for a really long time with music and film and animation, kind of working with bands. And although it's different practices, it's a similar type of hustle that I don't always love. But I don't know, I guess with what I do earn from it and all that stuff, all the lessons and everything, it's more than a hobby. Am I on Facebook? So, oh yeah, all pencil art. So not all pencil art, but my favorite stuff is pencil art. I also do ballpoint pen scribble art, like scribble method. Um, and then I paint, but I don't really document that. I have in the past with watercolor for like faster things, but I do acrylic and starting to move over into oil painting. If I am on Facebook, it's just basically a mirror image. Like, yes, I am, but it's a mirror image of my Instagram. So typically what happens on Facebook is I'll post something or share something from one of my socials, and then one of my parents' friends will write me stuff that's like belongs in a direct message. That's kind of my experience of Facebook so far. Not to knock it, I know it works differently for different people, but me personally, it's always like people writing me about something they remember from when I was in middle school, like ages ago. And then just so he looks a little less like a zombie, I'm going to add just a tiny bit of texture in the eyes, but I am going to go back in and round these out. So you should buy cheap wallpaper and use the back to watercolor. Yeah, that's a really good idea. I honestly, like with watercolor, I've done a lot of really small uh, canvases, or actually I do watercolor in Paper Republic books, mainly because I was selling them at my day job. I'm just kind of filling time with them, and then I just like the idea of being able to carry it around in a fold-up book. And some of their paper holds it really well. But yeah, I don't really do huge watercolor pieces, but if I do, I'm probably going to take you up on that idea. I've seen a lot of people that buy like big spools of it, so they have their own paper. There's a guy named Martin Lockmere that I keep in touch with a little bit. That's an Austrian painter, and he stretches his own paper and does all kinds of interesting stuff. But there's something about seeing him do that, and then also seeing his art be virtually identical on like a store-bought pad. Like I think it's in the long run probably smarter. It saves money, but I don't know. I'm pretty lazy about some of that stuff, which is basically why you'll only ever see me drawing from this angle. You don't ever see my face, but eventually I'll do multicam and get more into the production side of it. It's just a product of, I guess, laziness or ease. Allows me to put a little bit more effort in like the art process itself. but it's a good idea. So looking at it, I mean, I know who it is, so I can tell how on point for the reference photo it is, but I feel like any real like film heads might start to recognize it. Not to say that you'd have to be obsessed with film to know it, but he's starting to look a little bit more recognizable. And like I was saying earlier, this is so early in the sketch, it is rough. If I draw an image upside down, it will come out more true as your eyes see upside down. The brain turns the information around. Yeah, I've used that a lot when I've taught, especially when people struggle with like spatial like formations and like architecture. It sort of removes like the puzzle solving that your brain does a little bit if you're new to drawing, or even if you're not new to drawing and maybe trying like a different style. The only problem with that is everybody be watching this upside down, which I guess y'all could flip your phones. But yeah, it is cool. There's years ago a band I was in was playing a tour, and we opened for a band, and they had a shirt that I used to wear all the time. I didn't love the band, but they had a couple good songs, but their shirt said "I see things upside down," and it had a diagram of a guy looking at something, and had like a medical diagram of what your brain does when it sees the image. I always think about that when I hear about that method or tell anyone about it. Oh, nice. What type of art? Oh, nice. Very cool. Yeah, sculpting is one thing I haven't gotten into. It's mainly just a lack of space and not wanting to necessarily share studio space with people out here. But I do respect it a lot. And like I was saying earlier, I paint as well, but it's just not something I do as often. I like the idea of being able to fold something up and putting it in a bag and taking it with me. I can see how this would look like Hannibal Lecter. Now that I'm looking at it, but it's definitely not him. Although I could pivot and make it him. To add a few more lines. I think it's really the weight of the nose that's doing it. What am I drawing now? So I haven't told anyone yet. I'm allowing people to guess. It's the hint or the sort of reference that I gave earlier is that I've been working too much lately. It's been really dull. I do remember you, yeah. Let's see. Brendan said, I've been painting in New York. May Pang. Nice. Very cool. Just watched 2 documentaries on the Beatles recently. It's kind of a family tradition of ours during Christmas. Let's see, yeah, as far as like the remembering people in these chats, I have a few like regulars, like Nolan pops up, there's Travis, there's a couple guys. Oh, speaking of Nolan, he's right there. Yeah, Rouge was in here. But yeah, there's only a few people that kind of like pop up repeatedly so far, which I like that, but yeah, so it's easy to remember. Bossatron, yeah. Let's see, Brennan said, I used to support big bands over the years, been writing songs too. What was your band's name? I was in a lot of bands. I played as a hired player for a few bands, but I toured for and recorded for, you know, like, I guess close to 20 years. If I'm doing the literal math on it. The one that most people would know from, like, we were a warm-up band. It was called Leopold and His Fiction. It's kind of a thorn in my side because I don't really have like a ton of fond memories of the band, but it brought on a lot of fond memories that came subsequently from being in it and traveling with them. So that was one that Stiff Little Fingers. Oh yeah. Yeah, love Stiff Little Fingers. I was in that band. I played with a guy named Levi Smith for a while. I tour managed bands. I shot a lot of photos and video and did music videos for bands for a long time. It was kind of like my side thing. If I wasn't touring with a band, I was making music videos and animation for bands most of the time. And so it's kind of how I pivoted into mostly art. That's who you played with? Oh, wow. Yeah, I actually know who that is, like relatively well. Were you in the band, or were you like, was it like a hired situation? I mean, I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all. That was kind of what my role was with most bands, was hired for a while and then usually joined years later. Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of like what my role was for a lot of people. There were a few bands that hired me as a touring manager, and then I shot photos and video for them, and then if somebody quit or got fired, I would just step in so we didn't have to end the tours. Yeah, so probably, I imagine we probably had a similar sort of role with some of these guys. But yeah, it's a great band. Um, Most of my bands, I guess the one that people would know the most would be Leopold, which is always kind of annoying to me because there's so many elements of that band that I really hated. But yeah, we were a warm-up act, so we like had a lot of good gigs and had a lot of opportunities that someone, not me, blew, basically. So that's kind of how it goes, I guess, with bands. I'm sure you know if you're around them. But yeah, that's why I don't play with anybody anymore, because I've got so burnt out on somebody else's behavior being attached to our inevitable outcome of, you know, the success of our band. And now in my head, I'm starting to look at this and think Hannibal Lecter, but it's not. It's definitely not. I just need to shape them up more. Yeah, I played, with that band, I played drums and keys and sang. Hey, there's Bossatron. Nice, good job, Nolan. Life progresses, man. You're making strides since you first started coming in these places. It's cool. Nice. Yeah, so I played early on when I was touring with Levi. I played bass and sang. Before that, I was playing drums in bands and guitar, just depending on what band. Guitar was really my first instrument, but I don't know, everyone had a guitar player. Everybody needed a bass player, a drummer, and so that's where I ended up floating around most of the time. And then, oddly enough, with the band that I toured with the most, which was the Leopold band, I was actually building a website for that guy and doing like promo stuff for him. And he called me and asked if I knew anyone that played bass or guitar or bass or drums. And I said I played both. Find one and I'll play whatever you don't find. And he couldn't find a bass player, so I played drums. So we could go out as a two-piece. And then we kind of had like a Spinal Tap curse with our bass players in terms of like how they had their drummers. Like we burned through bass players like they were disposable pins. But yeah, there's some like spare recordings out there where it's actually me playing bass and drums and lap steel and singing and a bunch of stuff. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, we were more of towards the end we were more of a licensing band, so every once in a while I'll have like the funny reminder of hearing something I got paid really poorly on like a commercial sync. Which sounds like a gripe, but really it's just a testament to being in bands with dirtbags. Nice. Positron back with the Moto talk. Oh yeah, I brought up regulars. Rouge hasn't been in a long time. There used to be Travis who would pop in all the time. Somebody I thought was honestly my older brother, like pretending to be interested to like boost like interest on the algorithm or something, but ended up being a completely different Travis. It's kind of funny because then like the day after that guy started talking, my brother told me to watch some of the live. Yeah, Bossatron's like motorcycle car guy. I think that's Bossatron. You were who I was talking to about Triumphs, right? I'm pretty certain of it. I'm pretty positive that was you because we were talking about whether or not I'd ever get back on a bike. Oh, nice. That's I feel like making an acoustic guitar is kind of like a rite of passage. Requires like a skilled hand, patience. There's a guy that my grandmother and grandfather used to pal around with that I wouldn't say grew up with necessarily, I guess young adults, party days. He's a somewhat revered folk singer, writer, Guy Clark. He used to make guitars towards like the later years in his career, and he always signed them with a bloody thumbprint. I always thought that was like really interesting. Oh yeah, we got like a couple conversations going. Yeah, that was us talking. Yeah, yeah. I'm living in San Francisco. I'm not planning on getting back on a bike. I've seen some gnarly wrecks here. Actually saw one not that long ago, but it wasn't a bike, it was a scooter. It's one of those idiots. It's always like riding around like the food delivery they have is more important than like any traffic lights, blowing through stop signs and stuff. But yeah, talking about what Brendan was mentioning, Guy Clark used to make guitars, and years and years ago, my grandmother, she's a little older than him. She took him to a bar. I think it was on his 21st, and they were pretty tuned up, and he had set his guitar on the floor behind them. It's like a Houston dive bar, like way back in the day. And she got up to go to the bathroom, and her legs were asleep, and she fell down and crushed his guitar. And her dad heard the story and felt so bad that he bought Guy a really nice Martin. And his joke was that the guitar was 10 times the guitar that he had. And so my grandmother, every time she saw a Guy, said, "You owe me a guitar." And then anytime he'd bring like a custom made guitar around, she's like, "Is that mine?" You know. But she didn't even play anymore. She had this great little Martin that just kind of sat in the corner and collected dust. Oh, nice. If you like cello in general, I can recommend a couple guys that I listen to. It's not anything like Stiff Little Fingers or any bands like that, if that's kind of what you listen to. But one of my buddies, Dylan LeBlanc, has a lot of good cello on his albums. And then one of the guys that used to play on it and went solo is Caleb Elliott Smith, the guy I used to work with. Great cellist. Gonna pull these guidelines up. Sorry, I've been Trying to keep up with the conversation. I'll take just a quick drink break. Let's see, in a guitar is the design and craftsmanship. Let's see, the big part, more important than the strings. I'm sure Brendan will probably have an opinion on this. I feel like it depends on who you ask. I had $100, I don't know what it was new, but I had $100 Parlor Yamaha guitar that I picked up from a friend, mainly just because it was like cheap and we could not throw it, but figuratively throw it in a van when we were on tour and not really worry if it got banged up or whatever. And everybody I toured with, we always had it. It's always in every van. And it was the cheapest little guitar, and I just kept like nice strings on it and tuned it and played it all the time. And, fortunately it had like the neck was true, so it was straight, no bows or bends. And it was on a lot of recordings, and a lot of people loved it. It was a $100 guitar. But then I've also played a $1,500 Taylor guitar, and it had all the bells and whistles and expensive strings, and it played like shit. So it depends on how they're set up. It depends on what they're set up for. It depends on what gauge strings you have. But a poorly made guitar plays like a poorly made guitar. But poor doesn't mean, like, simple doesn't mean poor. So like a simply made guitar can be great. But yeah, I've got a lot of anecdotes about that. My brother's also a guitar tech, so I've heard a great deal about cheap versus just well thought out, or like buying a cheaper guitar and modding it out so it's more of what you'd want. But it depends on who plays it. That's the other thing is like in terms of guitars or drums, I've had friends who get their kids like a toy drum kit or a toy guitar, and I can make them sound like something you'd use on a recording just by having like good feel and touch on them. And it's about like how well you play, how confidently you play, and just understanding how to play the instrument to make it sound right. Of course, there are those times like if you have a guitar that has a bow in the neck and there's tuning issues, like actual like intonation issues, it doesn't matter what strings you have on it, you just have a messed up guitar. But I've had a lot of cheap guitars over the years. Actually, like my favorite guitar right now, you might have opened up like a whole can of worms with this, because I could answer in a lot of different ways. But I have a Guild Troubadour. Oh, Bossitron's taken off. I think I was answering your question. Anyway, I'll answer this anyway. But yeah, just to catch that, what Brendan was saying, yes, Willie Nelson has had, I think his guitar's name is Trigger. He's had it forever and it's got holes in it. I actually have a friend who signed it. Yeah, it's all beat up, but that's, if I'm not mistaken, I think is that a Silken Steel? Which those strings are quite a bit different. It's what I have on my Guild right now. I prefer those strings and guitars that are set up to play those, like in a really light gauge. But to answer, like, more specifically, I have a Guild Troubadour, like a small body guitar, and it's cool. I like it. And it doesn't need to be set up. It's set up plenty well. It's got nice strings on it. But I almost prefer playing like a $350 Squier Telly that I have, just because it's more fun. Very different guitars. So it just depends, you know. The Telly's set up really well. Let's see. Just going back through the chat. I think I've officially chased everyone out talking about guitars. That's all right. You have a Hofner bass, 1962, and dang. That's really cool. I've always wanted a Hofner. Either that or a Rickenbacker, but even though they're very different animals. 10 gauges, yeah. I play light gauge strings as well. Like Billy Gibbons said, you're doing too much work if you're playing anything heavier than a 9. Anyway, I'm gonna focus on drawing for a little bit, but everybody keep talking. I don't mind it at all. I just, I don't want to bore people visually. Get some of this forehead going. But yeah, I think like of talking bands in general, like what we were mentioning earlier, I had more positive experiences talking gear or just playing around than I ever did actually being in a band. Or like I found a really great drum kit years ago. Kind of got swindled out of it, but it's all good. It's memories now. Oh no worries, Brendan. I do that. I'll ramble and get distracted, especially because I have enough of an opinion about what he was asking about. But it's all good. Keep talking, throwing it in there. I'll grab them. I just want to remember I'm still drawing. It's more on me than y'all. But yeah, years ago I was on the road, and I was looking for a new drum kit, and I found a 71 Super Classic, Ludwig 71 Super Classic, and it was mother of pearl. And instead of like the smaller pearl flakes that they did for a while in the late 60s and early 70s, it was the big triangular ones, which I feel like it was priced wrong. It's a matched kit, so like all the original pieces with cases, and it was $1,000. And you know, as it goes, being in a band and being broke and young, I asked our lead singer if he would front me or advance my pay so I could get it, and then he bought it out from under me and said it was the band's kit, and so long as I was in the band I could play it. And then let's see, you said playing for over 40 years or more, it was fun. Yeah, like that's, I think that I agree, like it's more fun than like I think it's more about the fun than anything else. But yeah, anyway, that drum kit, he knew what it was after I told him. He didn't know what a Super Classic was, or the year, or the rarity of that specific pattern. And then when I left the band years later, I asked if I could buy it out from under him, and he said, well, you know what it's worth, so you can pay that. And I said, what we paid for it? And he goes, no, you can pay the market value for it. And now I believe the floor tom is his kid's nightstand, so it went to good use. But that's kind of like most of my band experiences were things along those lines, where it's sort of like I choose to look at it in a funny way now, because it is funny. It's silly that all went down that way. But I will say I've heard the other drummers that played after I left, and then I went back and played in the band again years later, and no one got it to sound quite like I did. I always had a thing about like a Ringo type of tone, like T-tail tone. sort of dead and dry, not a lot of room for ringing or anything like that, which pretty much on all my own recordings and everything else, that's basically what it is. But yeah, by all means, keep talking about stuff. I don't mind at all. I just I realized I've been sitting here not drawing for a second. Sort of what I posted about this earlier on Instagram, that if people wanted to see drawing and conversations, that's what I offer here. Supported this comics, great experience, fun festival, especially backstage. Oh, nice. And Tears for Fears, that's killer. That's I was actually listening to Tears for Fears earlier. Love the Buzzcocks. A lot of good bands, man. That's a good mix, good era too. I mean, I'm assuming it's from what you were saying, playing with Stiff Little Fingers. Yeah, I'm very happy to report that my kid actually loves, not all, but some Tears for Fears and Beatles, and she can pick out like a handful of bands. She knows The King, she knows Beach Boys. It does make me think, though, I need to show her some other, like more specifically, like Buzzcocks would be a good one. Oh, nice. Speaking of basses, I've actually sitting right next to my bass. It's not anything super fancy right now, but my iPod, or my, not iPod, it's a dated reference, my AirPods are hanging on one of the tuning keys. I've got such a small little art space, sort of office setup, that sort of have to utilize everything. But years ago, I had a really great bass. That's one of those things you always regret selling later on. But I had a Fender Marcus Miller Signature Series Dark Sunburst. It has sort of the active passive, or passive active pickups with like the modifier switch on it. It was a great bass. Played really well. Had butterscotch inlays. Sold it to a dude in Russia, which also felt like sacrilege because he gave me all these things about how to ship it, and I had to take it apart, which felt just wrong, even though it was, it's a bolt-on Fender, so it's fine. But something wrong about disassembling something that I made a living on, played for years and years. I think that, and then I had a 69 Bassman that was a match set, and I was the second owner of it, and it's when they still had the aluminum dust caps on the speakers, so it broke up at a lower volume. 100-watt silver face. And it was tall. It was before they started offsetting the speakers. But parted with that to fund a move for my family, so I guess for a good reason. But talk about an amp, man. That was great guitar amp, great bass amp. It's on a lot of shows, a lot of recordings. It's hard to tell really how much y'all can see of this because I'm looking at it and it looks like the highlights and the mids are just crushed. It's making me want to get a new phone or film with a different camera. go a little bit quieter because teeth are always a pain. I was also just thinking about how few drawings I've done recently where I actually have to draw teeth. A lot of these are going to be negative space. Nice. That's a good variety of amps. I use that basement for so many gigs, and then I loaned it to our bass player when I was playing drums. And we basically tracked everything with it. Very cool. Yeah, I'd be interested to hear that in terms of style that you're talking about. Work on these eyes a little bit. Not enough contrast in here yet to really shove a downward angle. Just in terms of for the archive or anybody who watches for the art tips, always circular motions, especially on this paper. Even though it may look like I'm doing back and forth, it is varying degrees and sizes of circles. Speaking specifically to my style, not as a rule, but in terms of eventually making them more photoreal. If you start doing cross-hatching in these, it starts to really limit how much you can really add to these in terms of depth. Yeah, I agree. In terms of sharing skills and things like that, it's I don't know. I feel like I see a lot. I've talked about this before in here, but I see a lot of people that sort of offer classes and things like that. And although I teach privately, especially on here, or if people have questions, I always like to just give away the information because it's I don't know, something about maybe it'll sort of ignite something or help somebody figure out what they're not able to figure out on their own. Imparting knowledge. And then with hair, it's a little bit different. What I usually add is sort of directional texture. It's where you will see the few straight lines in here. And back to tight groupings of circles to start blending that hairline. Which I'm not going to do much on the hair other than just general shapes. And something I always tell people when they're trying to figure out, especially portraits without a grid or constantly measuring, is looking at the negative shapes, meaning not necessarily the shape of the hair, but the shape in between, like sort of this vacant pocket right here in his forehead. All right, I'm going to draw for just a little bit longer. I'm going to do about an hour and a half tonight, and then I'll be back on tomorrow night. And like I said earlier, I'm going to draw every day. I'll be live every day for a little bit at least. Some days I might go for a few hours. I've got this portrait and one more to finish in this current book. And yeah, Kevin, there you go. It is Jack Nicholson. First time caller, correct right away. Yeah, good guess. But yeah, I'll be live every night working on these, but I've got this to finish. So probably a couple sessions, and then I mentioned it earlier, but I've got a portrait of the dude that I'm also going to finish. That one's mostly done, but kind of got tripped up with holiday timing and day job stuff, so I quit going live on that one. But once I finish this, I'll finish the dude, and then I'm going to start a new book. All right, and it's an hour 20, so pretty much just going to get these very roughly sketched out here just to kind of give myself an outline for tomorrow night when I start. But yeah, starting today, I'm going to just see how many days I can go live in a row. I think my longest stretch is 36 days in a row. And in theory, tomorrow I'll have better audio. So I'm hoping, I've got to test out a couple things, but I want to see if I can set up a microphone on the page as well as for talking. Because I'd like to rule out all the noise that our neighbors create. Actually, this needs to come down a little bit more shallow. feel like I was at a point in the drawing where it's a little easier to pick out. The people who were watching for a while earlier didn't really get the chance to guess because they had to watch me create it from scratch. But them's the breaks. Continuing on a thought from earlier, how I was talking about the pencils that I use, which are Blackwing Naturals. That's the extra firm. I've only sharpened this once in this whole time. Nice talking with you, Brennan. Thanks for sticking around. I'll be live every day drawing on these things, so feel free to drop back in any old time. But yeah, talking about these pencils, the extra firm, I just find that like I have to sharpen them far less than some of the other ones, so they hold an edge really well. And I don't know, I wish that they had more of the 71 series, which is the Frank Lloyd Wright series. I guess just because I like the color of them, and I got them as a gift a while ago, but I think they've all but discontinued those. So if anyone knows where to find them, or maybe I can make a special request now that I'm technically a Blackwing ambassador. Which sounds funny to say. But yeah. All right, a couple more minutes and then I'm gonna sign off. But just kind of working on shaping this chin right. There's gonna be a lot of stubble in here. Get these guidelines out of the way. Let's see, Brennan said I don't draw lines, I use a different technique. If I'm drawing an eye, I draw from the inside out. Like a spider's web, slow, but good technique as well. Very cool. Yeah, it's very, very different from what I'm doing, but that's a good technique. Yeah, I find just because the final products of mine are typically photorealistic, I just start with the basics. Just one little line at a time. What I'm doing right now, honestly, I am thinking about tomorrow when I sit down to draw after working, because I am going to be back at work tomorrow. I'm thinking to myself that I'm going to sit down and say, I'm glad that I did this part yesterday. So I can just focus on building texture and depth tomorrow. Thanks very much, Brennan. I'd love to see some of your stuff. I'll have to either, let's see, I'll remember your screen name, or if you want to drop a comment somewhere, I'll go check something out. All right, over and out, Brennan. Good talking with you, man. So, still rough, but it's in a good spot. Not too bad for talking a lot and drawing at the same time. Got about a minute and a half. I'll just kind of round out a couple more things, get some of these lines tentatively put in there. The other thing is that for these, I was trying to draw horizontally for a while just to see how that worked, but YouTube didn't like that. So I'm gonna continue drawing. In this orientation for a while, and I want to be able to move my reference off the table so I don't have a glare that I'm fighting with while I draw. Hey, Nolan, what's up? I'm actually sadly about to hop off, but I will be back on tomorrow. I just kind of wanted to put in like a quick hour and a half tonight. I'm gonna try to get back on and finish this one tomorrow. Not sure of the time exactly, but nighttime, like I said earlier. So if you're working again, you'll have to catch me on that one. Don't think you were in here earlier, but somebody guessed correctly. It is Jack Nicholson. More specifically, it's Jack Nicholson from The Shining. The hint that I gave earlier is that I said that I've been working a lot, and it's been very dull. If anyone knows The Shining, you know what he types. All work and no play. Blah, 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 blah. All right. No, definitely not Chucky. Not a fan of those films. I know that a lot of people love them, but honestly, I'm not even a huge fan of The Shining. I love Kubrick, but man, it's a lot of dark stuff. Also, just feel bad for oh, what's her name? Just completely blanked on her name. Oh, she plays his wife in this. She was great and everything. She's great in Popeye. Yeah, just completely drawn a blank. Anyway, well, cool. Thanks for watching. I'll be back on live tomorrow. I'll try to finish this drawing, and then like I said before, I've got a drawing of the dude from The Big Lebowski that I'm going to finish, and then this book is actually finished, like all done, every page. And then I'll start another one, which is 94 pages of drawing-ish. Actually, it might be less if I'm only doing one side. But yeah. So subscribe or whatever. I hate all that stuff, but you know, it's necessary. If you like watching drawing or have any questions about art, I'm happy to answer them. All right, see you tomorrow.